The very latest of Operation Epic Fury and Operation Roaring Lion as it continues. And really, we want to get a perspective of what it's like right now in Israel. Ever since 2023, there has been a lot of activity, unfortunately, in Israel. And now Israel, along with the United States, taking on Iran, and Israel taking some of the brunt here of Iran trying to strike back. So we want to get some insight of what it's like in Tel Aviv and the surrounding areas right now. So I want to bring in our next guest to help break it all down. I want to bring in Shanna Fuld, anchor and CEO of the Israel Daily News. Great to have you on, Shanna, once again. And, you know, we had you on earlier in 2023 when Hamas was attacking Israel. And now it's just a whole nother ball game here with the United States and Israel going at it with Iran.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on to talk about this really important global issue.
So let's talk about it. What is the insights and perspective that is going on right now in Israel?
So today, you asked me earlier, how was today? Today has been really difficult. We have been in and out of the shelter all day, much more than the last couple of days. And we're not only dealing with rocket fire now from Iran, but also from Hezbollah, which had been quiet for about a year and is now re-engaging and sending missiles over the border. And we in the bomb shelter, my neighbors and myself, were talking about how it is likely an effort to overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome and confuse the Iron Dome so that these missiles can get through. And today I was actually sitting in my home in between sirens thinking to myself how crazy it is actually that the goal is to murder. The goal is to confuse the Iron Dome so that these missiles actually can strike down on civilians and kill us. And it's just sort of a out of mind experience to think that this is what people want. The sentiment on the ground from most Israelis is, we feel that this is a responsibility that we need to do and move through in an effort to have a more secure Israel and a more secure world. And if you talk to an average Israeli, you know, the average Israeli is really caught up on the news and really understands their history and really understands what's happening right now. And it's more than just the headlines. They understand that we are the first line for the rest of the world in terms of combating terror, and that if Israel doesn't do something about this, being that Israel's first in line for the firing squad from Iran, the rest of the world is at risk too. And I think that we're seeing that right now.
And Shanna, talk about the resilience of so many in Israel, that resiliency that we have seen since 2023 and really beyond. But really these last couple of years have been trying, but again, taking on Hamas and then conquering that objective, and now in a whole nother world here as taking on Iran, Hezbollah, and others.
Mike, I think the thing that is really shocking to the outside world is the resilience of the Israeli people. And I've heard this word thrown around so many times. But in my experience, like you said, since 2023, resilience actually means something. It means people running up and down into bomb shelters. It means women who have been running their households with 5 kids and no husband because he's out to war for 2.5 years. Or it means a newlywed mother who's just lost her new husband because he died in war. And that's what Israelis have been dealing with since 2023. I think the epitome of resilience that I experienced was on Sunday. I went to report on the Tel Aviv hit. There was a missile that did not get intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome, and it decimated on Saturday evening at 11 p.m. a whole neighborhood in Tel Aviv, I would say for 5 to 6 blocks in every which direction. And I personally interviewed a landlord of the top floor apartment who is a French woman. She moved to Israel at the age of 17, joined the IDF, and she has 5 children and a husband. Their home was lost in an instant. They all went into the bomb shelter. They closed the door. And she said within about 10 seconds, thank God she had that door closed, she heard the impact. She smelled the fire from the missile that had blown up her apartment, and they had to wait to be rescued. Now, I think that you know this at your team. Your team has been incredible in having me on in the past few years. About 6 months ago, this exact story happened to me. I was inside of my apartment when a missile struck just outside and decimated my place. I'm speaking to you now, I think for the first time actually, from my new studio, from my new home, which I was forced to move into because my old one got bombed. And what she said in the interview that I took with her was, I know it's a risk to Israel. I know raising my children here is risky, and I do it anyway because I believe in Israel. I believe that the Jewish people have a right to have a homeland, and I'm fighting for it, and we'll continue on. I don't know if you interviewed many people from many different cultures around the world who looking to purchase, which is what she told me off camera. She's clearing out her stuff. Say to you, I understand that we're free Iran and for a more secure Israel in the future. And if me and my whole family have to be bombed out of our house to do it, that's what it is going to take. And she said that to me while she was holding her kid's dollhouse that she was able to pull out from the rubble from upstairs.
Ah, geez, remarkable. Yeah, so many people would not even have tried to even want to be talking. They would be shocked. They would be, in tears. But talk about in that instant, that woman is able to rebound in real time and still conduct an interview.
She held it together when I stopped rolling. She cried, and I cried with her, and I gave her a hug because I understand what she's about to go through. And she asked me a few questions, and I said, do you want the real answers, or do you want me to give you some words of encouragement? She said, tell it to me for real. I said, this is going to be a journey. It could take you 6 months to get back on your feet, but you will. You will get back on your feet. And I also recommended to her that she go through the system. And the system means letting the state put you in a hotel, which is what I did. And they put me up in a hotel. I was there for 2 months. And they send social service workers from the city to be in the lobby. And when you let the system guide you as much as possible, that's where you can really get the most help. And that's what I'm telling people to do is actually don't go into family and friends' homes. You try to get that help from the state, because you get registered into the system, and then you get some of the services that are available to you by going downstairs. And also, you could imagine that it can be, after your house got blown up, while you're inside of it, being in a place that feels like you have support, like the hotel staff, or having a place that you can get into a kitchen and have some meals, is a really big deal when you've lost everything and you have so much to deal with. So yeah, the resilience here. And by the way, people were celebrating the holiday of Purim, which just in short, Mike, is a holiday where a Jewish queen in the story, it's a story. The story is that the Jewish queen found a way to convince the king of ancient Persia not to kill all of the Jews. And she did so successfully, and we celebrate 2,500 years later this success. And we celebrated it yesterday with parties. And what did people do here in Tel Aviv? They went into parking garages and shelters, and DJs showed up, and people brought drinks, and people are making coffee stands in the underground parking, and people even threw themselves a wedding. They had a wedding that was scheduled for yesterday, and instead of doing it in the hall, they did it in a mall parking garage 3 floors down, and people from all over the city showed up to support them. That is resilience.
Yeah, that is the bounce back mentality that we have been hearing, and you have been sharing so many of these types of stories throughout Israel. I would have to imagine, though, there's these stages of grief that happens when you lose a property, much like if you lost someone. Maybe can you explain what that process is like? I'm sure in the very beginning you're just happy to be alive, but then you have to go through these different stages, right?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you said that, Mike, because when I lost my apartment, a lot of people said, well, at least you're alive, at least you're alive. And yes, that is true, but that's certainly not what anyone who just lost their entire home would like to hear. And I also want to say that I receive a lot of hate comments online for the Israel Daily News, the news outlet that I run, and we have a very popular Instagram page. And people comment, how does it feel? This is what you deserve. Imagine what the people are going through in Gaza. And I'd like to say this, as Israelis, we are thinking about the people in Gaza. When it rains in Tel Aviv, we know what the weather is like in Gaza because it's just an hour south. Okay, it's an hour south without traffic here. And I'd like to say to all of those people who are saying, how does it feel? Well, this is what you deserve. Nobody deserves war. No one wins in war. The people that might win from this war are my kids. I don't have kids right now, but the future generation hopefully will not be dealing with an Iranian regime that is funding and training terror proxies on Israel's borders in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria, depending on what you call it, and around the world, training these terror proxies to gang up on Israel and try to eradicate Israel. And I think a lot of people don't really see the larger geopolitical picture, which is that Iran is pumping funds and doing training sessions with its proxies surrounding Israel. So the idea is that by knocking out Iran, by knocking out Hamas, by knocking out Hezbollah, which has been a very long time that Israel has been working on this since October 7th, 2023, and of course, previous to that during with intelligence work, the idea is that it's going to be the next generation that's going to be able to benefit from all of this war. But when somebody loses their home, the grief process, at least for me, looked like this. I had to do so many things that I wasn't able to grieve until I got into my next place. I was so busy, first of all, running from rocket fire in the last spat of Iran war, what Trump called the 12-day war. I was so busy running up and down the stairs in my hotel to get to safety. I was so busy filling out paperwork to the tax authority. I was robbed several times. We don't know by who, but people entered my home right after it was blown up, and the door was actually damaged by the impact. And I found my jewelry box empty in my doorway when I came back in a couple of hours later. So I had everything stolen from me, and thieves came back later on to steal the copper wiring out of our electrical cabinets, and people stole all kind of stuff. We don't know who these people are, okay? But this is the type of stuff that happens when you have chaos underway. So my grief didn't really begin until I was out of the hotel, until I had signed a lease on a new apartment, and I had taken all my stuff out of storage, which I'm so grateful to myself to have thought to put everything into storage because a lot of people got their stuff stolen, including myself. So the grief really began once I was able to catch my breath.
Yeah, truly. I mean, so many people just can't even imagine. But to see just how you and so many others are able to bounce back. Lastly, Shanna, I want to get your take. The U.S. and Israel doing such a great job of snapping the snake's head off in Iran, but how worried are you that if they don't continue to complete the job, that there might be a new snake there or a couple of other new snakes that come from a vacuum?
So I really think that's an excellent question, and it's something that people have said about Hamas. They've said, well, Hamas is an ideology. How do you get rid of an ideology? Well, how did you get rid of any regime in the past that needed to be taken out in order to proceed through world peace? You have to cut down the leadership, you have to get rid of the leadership, and you do have to move with force. And this is not something I subscribed to before I lived in the region, and it's really important for me to impart on your viewers and listeners, Mike, that you cannot take a Western and American mentality and put it on Eastern people. That is one thing that has frustrated me as an American, that has had to adjust my mindset. I believe in liberty and justice for all. I was born and raised in the United States and made Aliyah. I claimed my Israeli citizenship and returned to the land of my ancestors. And what I have understood is that the power in this region is taken through force. It is not through handshakes. It is not through smiles. It is not through negotiations. The negotiating tactic that is understood in this region is power, force, and money. I'm sorry to say it, but that is what it is. It is a man's world. I say it all the time. I think we need female leadership. I think women would have different approaches, but we've been living in this testosterone-heavy, war-heavy landscape for millennia. We don't even know what a different world looks like. This is what we know. And so my thought is, Thomas Friedman, New York Times reporter, who's very tough on Israel, put out an opinion piece this week that I read that had a lot of accuracies. I felt that he had things a little off about the Israel angle, but he said that what he thinks is more likely to happen is an Islamic Republic 2.0, meaning the C-level, let's call them the C-suite leaders that have been eradicated already. By the way, day one, okay, Israel and the U.S. took out that C-suite of IRGC leaders on day one, okay? So those people were removed. What we're going to be left with is going to be hopefully a more moderate version, hopefully people that have been tier 3, tier 4 on the list. And I also have wondered, what is the Iranian people going to do to lean on? I think people don't understand that during war, you still have to work, you still have to pay those electricity bills, you still have to have running water, and there needs to be humans to run that infrastructure. I think people sometimes regime change, okay, so overnight we're going to have it. We're not going to have regime change overnight. So what I think is likely to happen is that the big bad leaders have already been taken out, and if the tier 3 and tier 4 leaders in Iran are smart, they will create a leadership team that can better support the people of Iran, who notoriously were the most progressive in the region. They notoriously were the women that were the most advanced, that believed in and subscribed to the most Western ideology. And that's what people in Iran who are oppressed are seeking. So what do I think about the fact that the U.S. and Israel has decapitated its C-suite leaders, as I call them? I think that we may see a new reality in the Middle East, but I think that it will have to become through a gradient as opposed to something that's black and white overnight.
Yeah, the eyes of the world are definitely watching, and I don't know how any enemies of the U.S. and Israel look at some of these bombing runs that are happening just these last 4 days and say, you know what, I would like to get involved with them. I don't know how that would even work out, but we kind of know how it would end, no doubt about it. Shanna?
And that's the point, Mike.
Yep.
That's the point.
That is absolutely the point in the statement that is being made every day. Shanna, thanks so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox, and thank you so much for sharing the stories that you are finding in Israel right now. We appreciate it, and be safe, and may God continue to protect you.